Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Here's what's coming up. Cup final corker. The Hoops triumph at Hampden. It's all Greek to us. Scotland will face the former European champs 4 times very soon. And historic Hearts. The Jambos are 1 game away from being in Europe after Christmas for the first time in their history. Let's just hope they don't face 10 men. Hello and welcome whenever you're watching or listening to this. My name is Findlay Marks. I'm sitting in the hot seat once again, but I'm so delighted to say that I am joined by at least one of the trio that we've got in our team here, and that's the wonderful Laura Brannan. How are you, pal?
I'm good. I have been at a Christmas-themed pub quiz tonight, so I'm feeling lovely and festive.
What was the kind of highlight of the pub quiz then? Was it all the classic rounds but just with Christmas themes?
It was picture round, which was a range of very difficult and very easy. Your general knowledge Christmas stuff, and obviously the music round as well, which is great fun. I was so proud of getting full marks in the movie round though, so that was my kind of shining light from the night.
I would have had you backed on for that. Was it easy stuff, or were there some tricky ones in there as well?
They threw a kind of curveball in with Violent Night, which I don't think
Ooh.
many people got, and also
Hmm.
Red One, which is a current one that's out just now as well.
Yes, yeah. Other Christmas
And
movies are available.
and they even asked a little curveball of which country is FC Santa Claus from as well. So even got a sports question in there too.
Ooh, that's good. Where is he from? The team, rather. I don't know.
Finland,
Is it Finland?
the
It's
home
not
of
like the
Santa.
Lapland third division or something like that, no?
I kind of wish that was what their stadium was called.
We should say we did actually. This is a second attempt, isn't it, Laura, of recording the show tonight? We did start with all 3 of us, but Andrew is flying solo with the kids, and he's had to go off and attend to the little ones. So it's just the 2 of us. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be any less chaotic or misinformed than it usually is when Andrew's here. So let's just crack on. We did actually. We've had a really good industry question come in. I want to read it out verbatim. So it's from one of my really good friends, Craig. And he sent in and he apologized. He said it's probably not so much a question as it is a rant. But I'm just going to read it out verbatim because I thought it was really good. And it made a point. It jumped off something on the from the show last week, the preview to the League Cup final, which we'll get on to talk about in a minute, where we had Joshua Barry and Hamish Carton on, and Craig was talking about listening to something that Hamish had said about being a Scot who's based out here in Melbourne and has to watch a lot of games, and he actually enjoys watching with the commentary. This is what kicked off Craig's question. So he says, I've got a question for the pod. It hit me when Hamish was saying that he really liked commentary. I detest commentary to the highest degree. So my question is, where do you guys see the future of football broadcast technology? As someone who loves going to the games, I have a Celtic season ticket, an Alloa season ticket, and I don't miss Scotland home games. I don't really like watching games on TV. I don't like not being able to see the bits of the pitch that I want to look at, checking out for balls from corners, etc. And I find commentary like being stuck next to 2 people talking rubbish at the pub. I would love a red button type option where I could just get the crowd noise on a broadcast. And do you guys see this as a potential future? Maybe with the emergence of VR headsets, that I'll be able to get my wish one day and I'll get to look around the pitch instead of just showing me what the TV camera is doing. So as it's a long question, but that's a very good one. I
There's
don't
a
know,
lot of points in there.
but how do you feel in general about football commentary, Laura? Because obviously you work for TNT, so you're working with commentary and commentators themselves a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a very personal thing. We're all going to have commentators we love and commentators we absolutely hate. And I'm not going to name names because I don't think that's fair working in the industry. But there's definite ones where you turn over and you're like, oh God, here we go again. I've got to put up with him. And there's other ones I think just bring absolute energy and drama to it and enthusiasm to even the most boring game and really lift the audience. I think it's also different depending on what you're consuming it on. I think on TV, I don't know about you, Finn, but when I'm watching on TV, I find it very easy to tune out from the commentator. And sometimes whoever I'm sitting with will react to something and they'll shout angrily at the TV and I'll go, whoa, 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 what did he say? I wasn't even like, I didn't even take it in. Whereas on the radio, obviously it's a completely different type of commentary. They are completely your eyes in that situation and they have to describe everything so differently. So obviously your friend Craig is talking about TV commentary, I think more than anything. Um, a red button option to have the nat sound is a very interesting option because I can actually realistically see that as something in the future. And in fact, I'm actually kind of surprised it's not an option already.
Well, the weird thing is, I'd remember it being an option back in the day. So when Sky Sports used to have, do you remember Fan Zone, where they got fans, a fan on from each side? They were obviously just weren't random fans; they were people that worked in the media or whatever. But there would be an option. So if you watched a Premier League game on Sky, you would have, Martin Tyler and Andy Gray or whoever it was at the time doing the commentary. But you also had the option on the red button of listening to Fan Zone, which was a fan from each side commentating on the game, which was wildly funny at times.
Sounds
But
horrendous.
I'm sure I remember that there was a further option where you could just listen with Atmos sounds, like there weren't with no commentary. And it was good to do every now and again, especially if it was somebody that you didn't really, care for the way that they talked.
I'm the complete opposite though. When I used to cover games like when I was at Motherwell, I would work at the game, filming the match, and put the radio on in my ear so I could hear it
Yeah.
as well as watching it. And yeah, I just feel like I kind of like that added context. Also because for me personally, if I'm watching something dramatic, I want to share it with someone. And when I'm in a work environment, I can't sit with my friends and react to what's happening around me. I'm kind of on my own in my own little bubble. So if I've
Yeah.
got it all in my ears, it feels like all my friends around me are talking about it and I'm kind of reacting to them and enjoying their kind of enthusiasm because I don't get it any other way.
Yeah. I think it's interesting the point you make about the distinction between TV and radio, and again, like maybe as a child of sports side growing up on a Saturday, that was that's kind of what I grew up more with listening. I certainly listened to more games than I ever watched growing up, and there's some amazing commentators like David Begg or Alistair Alexander, and you're right, the way that they commentated on games was completely different to TV, because TV, you're kind of almost like adjuncting the action. You're tossing in like, oh, who's in possession now, or here's a stat, or you're really trying to build up the moments of tension or action as they play. Whereas on the radio, you have to constantly be talking. And one of the things that was great about, like, say, someone like David Begg, I remember this all the time, was his voice got more excited, almost like a horse race as it gets to the end, as one team got into the box. So if you were doing something else, like I was doing homework, or even I remember like dumping into the stock room when I was a student on my student job, and listening for a couple of minutes, you could hear how the game was going by David Begg, like talking about somebody going over the halfway line. Now they're getting slightly closer to the box, and the shot comes in and it's over and it's out for a corner, and he would remind you of the score, and it's Motherwell 2, Aberdeen 2, or whatever it was, that he was doing. And I just loved that way of like being able to take you along for the ride and being able to dip in when you needed to. It's just such a different medium from the TV one.
You're saying you listened to what was in your warehouse. Did you used to listen like in old jobs and have like a secret earpiece tucked in so you could listen when you're doing something else?
Well, my one of my student jobs, I kind of always worked in retail, so you couldn't really have them out on the shop floor, no. But that's why you would jump into the. I do remember a number of times I used to work in the WH Smith in Paisley for a number of years as a student job, and I worked at the back counter where all the CDs and pen refills and DVDs and everything were. So occasionally people would be like, oh, have you got such and such in stock? And I'd be like, I'll just go and check for you. And you'd go and listen in the stock room and just be like, oh, it sounds like they're under the cosh a wee bit here. And then you go back out and be like, sorry, I couldn't find it for you. No, we've not got any left in stock. So
Yeah, no, I've definitely done it at weddings before. Used to help my dad out, so he's a wedding photographer. And my role was more the kind of the secondary photographer who did faded into the background, got a lot of the candid shots, a lot of the detailed shots, didn't have to interact with any of the guests or anything. So I didn't have a lot of vocal. I didn't have to be present in their mind. In
Yeah,
fact, the more invisible I was, the better I was at doing the
better.
job. So in that my mind, a 3 o'clock, a Saturday wedding that took in the 3 o'clock games, I was like, great, I can put an earpiece in. I've got
Yeah.
long hair. I can feed the. That was back in the day we had wired headphones. Feed it down the back of your collar. Yeah, absolutely. I'd just be like, me, my camera, I'm away. Please, no one talk to me. I'm going to listen to this. Well, you guys are getting married, but I'm going to listen to the football.
Nothing's more important than hearing updates coming from, Easter Road or whatever at that point on a Saturday afternoon. Absolutely not. Completely agree.
What I also want to know, and this kind of moves us on to our funny section, what's been happening this week? How do commentators deal with when animals run onto the pitch? So, did you see this? There was officially a sighting of an animal in Scottish football, which I've been waiting for ages, by the way. I've been wanting this to happen at games where I've been covering it for so long, but there was a fox on the pitch at Stranraer. And I'm so gutted I missed this.
It was brilliant, and what was great was the commentary team. Were making jokes, and Stranraer have a great commentary team. The name escapes me of the main guy there, but obviously he's famous for Bang Bang Darren Lang and a couple of other absolute gems. But what I loved at the end of that is the summariser that's next to him on co-coms then goes on to mention somebody that's on the bench, I think for the opposition. And they were like, oh, people might remember him from when he was a high school teacher in Stranraer back in the day. I was like, that's the kind of local insight you just cannot get on TNT or Sky Sports or whatever. So, yeah, that was fantastic. It's just good to see animals on the pitch. It's never not a good thing.
I used to always wish when I was pitch side for Motherwell filming that I'd see an animal because part of me would always go like, well, how would I deal with it? I would personally want to rescue that animal, but also, have you seen like you see all these videos all the time of like players literally chasing dogs and the dog just rips the piss out of them, and then you end up just looking stupid in front of everyone. You can just imagine everyone's like, way, because you're running after this cat who has absolutely no intention whatsoever of stopping for you, and yeah. I can't deal with that embarrassment on that big stage. So I'm quite glad it didn't
Like that.
happen when I was there, but also gutted at the same time.
What else have you seen going around socials? Anything funny else that we've seen this week?
It's something really random, right? That it's not really newsy or anything like that, but I saw a random tweet that said it was a photo from quite high up at Celtic Park from the opposite tier looking over to the dugouts in the tunnel. This guy called Jig, he said, just another reminder for anyone with OCD that the halfway line and the tunnel at Celtic Park don't line up. And I have never thought about this before. And then I did think about it, and it really bugged me how few teams actually have a halfway line central to the tunnel where you run out. Now, what is going on? Why is this not a basic building structure of blueprints when you create a stadium? The halfway line is equally between the dugouts. Have you ever thought of this before?
No, I haven't, and I'm actually a bit annoyed that you brought it up because as someone who does have, I think we both have slightly OCD or mild OCD tendencies. It's absolutely ruined my morning as if I needed it ruined further, Laura, knowing this because it's not just like that one, the one at Celtic Park, which is marginally off centre. You've then made a list of all the ones that have them and the ones that don't, and I'll never be able to look at those grounds again in the same way.
I don't know what annoys me more, right? There's the ones that are slightly off centre, which is just completely bad planning. So you've got the likes of Motherwell, Hearts, Hibs. If you stand at the tunnel, the halfway line is just slightly to the left or right. I mean, Hearts is diabolical. It literally goes into the dugout. What
Yeah.
are you playing at? So they're kind of unforgivable. Then you've got the ones who are completely the opposite end of the pitch. Now, who designed this? Like, what phase did we go through where people thought it was a good idea putting tunnels in the corner? Kelly, Dundee United, Dundee, Aberdeen. Who's behind this? Who's to blame? And who actually likes this? Because I'm not a fan. Not, and I never realised before that I wasn't a fan, but now I'm strongly not a fan.
Do you know, weirdly, I'm probably the other way because I find it less irritating if they're just right in the corner. Because it's even, it looks odd. I'm more of a fan of dead centre, right? Teams come out, both run off into different areas of the pitch. But, there's some really iconic shot. Old Trafford is the one that's coming to mind a lot because they have theirs down at the corner of the pitch as well. and it leads for these beautiful shots of the teams coming out with both sides of the stand opening up round about them. So I'm not actually as averse to that, and at least it's not killing the OCD of it being marginally off. I think you're right. I think Tynecastle is the most ferociously disgraceful one. It's just such bad planning. But yeah, I think we need to move on just for both of our sakes from this conversation.
Fair play to Hampden, fair play to St Johnstone, St Mirren, and Rangers because you guys are kind of saving us right now.
Oh man. One other thing that I had seen, and just want to bring this up quickly, was, I don't know if you saw this, it was a post that Ayr United put out after they'd, in their own words, scalped Falkirk. Obviously, I play on the famous Kelpie structure that's outside Falkirk. But the image that they've used underneath, is this AI generated? Because I just can't see a world where Scott Brown would drive through to Falkirk and pose at this time of the night with this lighting. Can you describe the picture to us?
This photo is Scott Brown. Looks a bit like he's just leaving the trenches and about to return home from war. He's got this kind of khaki green trench coat on with the collar up, a grey jumper underneath. His face is just like coal covered. He's been through the wars, and then he's looking, glancing into the distance thoughtfully. And he's got the Kelpie, one of the Kelpies behind him. Now, obviously, he's not stood there at the Kelpies. The image of him, though, looking into the distance, I'm wondering if this is maybe something that is taken from like an old shoot for a Champions League match or something, and he's in a tunnel or something, and he's prepared to walk out, and he's looking, the camera's in his face in a tunnel waiting for him to walk out, and he's like, I'm not going to make eye contact, I'm looking straight into the abyss. But it's got to be AI driven. It's ridiculous looking.
It's either AI or there's been an as yet unconfirmed new Scandinavian noir drama that's coming out starring Scott Brown, because that's exactly what this photograph looks like. Like
It
he's
has those vibes, yeah.
weary detective somewhere in deepest, darkest Scandinavia who's solving some horrific murder. But I just love this. So if this is the future of AI art in Scottish football, I'm all for it, quite frankly. I think it's terrific.
It's Dykes, it's McLean! Oh, what a turnaround in Oslo! This is quite sensational! Unbelievable scenes at the Ullevall!
News, Laura. What has been going on? There's been some fairly big news on the Scotland front. Can you tell us what's been happening?
Yes, there has been a draw for the World Cup qualifiers, which is late 2025. So very exciting at the weekend. We had the draw. We were fairly certain we were going to get a team of four, which meant that we weren't going to start till September time, which came true. So we only have games September, October, November, 6 games to determine whether or not we qualify outright for USA, Mexico, and Canada 2026, or we go into a playoff, which will be the second place team. So in terms of the football itself, actually, I don't think this is a bad draw. So
No.
we have drawn. So the pot one team we've drawn is either going to be, and it's not decided yet, the losers of Denmark versus Portugal, which is the Nations League quarter-final, which will be decided in March, so we'll know after that. We are then playing Greece and Belarus. As football says go, and I think we're all hoping we get Denmark over Portugal after the recent Nations League games, we're capable of beating all of them. We're capable of winning this group. I don't think we should fear anyone here. My issue is more just as a fan. It's not the most exciting draw. As I say, if we do get Portugal, we had them just there in the Nations League twice. Don't really want to play them again so soon. Denmark we played quite recently, but we did do
And
well against
scalped
them.
as well. Yeah. Yep. I was there for that one. That was wonderful.
We've got happy memories, so yeah, we'll take that again. Greece, now we know we're playing them in the playoff to stay
Yep.
in League A, so it's a relegation playoff. We're playing them in March, and then again twice later in the year. So it's 4 games against Greece here that could technically determine the next 3 years, at least the next two tournaments, because They will determine whether we're in League A or not for the next qualifiers. They'll determine probably if we get to the World Cup, and in turn, probably determine how easy it is to qualify for Euro 2028 as well. So it's 4 games, and definitely not to be taken lightly here. And the third and final one is Belarus. Now, we haven't played Belarus for about 20 years.
Yeah, a long
So,
time.
yeah, a new exciting team to play. Yeah, that's great. But the problem is because the political side here, they are at war right now. They're aiding Russia in the war with Ukraine. And it means that they're playing their games in neutral territory in Hungary. I get PTSD just talking about Hungary in general. But they are also not just playing in neutral territory, but they're playing behind closed doors as well, which
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that, Finn, but to me, if you can't even guarantee safety in a neutral country and let fans in, why are they even allowed in the tournament?
Yeah, I mean it's a tricky thing, when these very real and very grave geopolitical things uh, overcross and intersect with the sporting element of these things as well. Of course, we've got a whole bunch of different things. That's the reason why Israel don't compete in the Asian qualifiers. They have to compete in Europe, and even within Europe, there are certain countries or regions and principalities that are kept apart because of the political situations that go on. It's just, it's really difficult because there's definitely an argument that these teams broadly shouldn't be allowed to participate because of what's going on at a governmental level. And we've seen examples of that in the past where the Yugoslav war in the early 90s meant that Yugoslavia were not allowed to compete at Euro 92. Worked out great for the Danes, who hadn't qualified, got a free ticket into the tournament and won the thing. So
Dreams are made of.
it's these things can happen. But then at the same time, there's maybe an argument as well that is it fair for people to be forbidden from competing at the highest level of their sport because of decisions that people in different countries or back home, whatever, are doing that might not even necessarily, or might be the complete opposite of what they believe personally as well. It's just sad that, as you're saying, it's moving to a neutral country. But yeah, there won't be any fans allowed in, even if it was, like Scotland away fans or whatever, only. But you kind of just need to play what's in front of you. It's a situation. I would argue maybe weirdly I know it's disappointing, it's behind closed doors, but the fact it's in Hungary and not Belarus, that's saving a couple of hours on a flight for the squad going out there, and maybe hopefully makes us less leggy. Obviously, it takes away the kind of proper home advantage of Belarus there, and that's very much the kind of country, Georgia, Belarus, those kind of Balkan countries over that side, that have caused us real issues before. So yeah, it's a real shame for the fans. But as you say, just looking at it in a purely footballing thing, I didn't think it was the worst possible draw. We'll obviously know more of what to expect from Greece from the playoffs. And hopefully we can do it over both those games. You would suspect it will be Denmark, not Portugal, that we would have. And I don't think that's a team necessarily to fear. And Belarus, obviously, we've just talked about that situation. So, but I think we can back ourselves. I mean, we've got a lot of players that have, from our team, that have started the season well and have started our national team games well, I would say, over the last little while. Especially, like the players in Italy. This is something that we wanted to chat about as well. We've obviously talked about Gilmore and McTominay, especially at length. But Shea Adams is doing bits out there as well in Serie A. Did you see his goal? At the weekend? My word.
Just like he scores from the halfway line. What the hell?
It's fantastic.
Brilliant.
So it is good that that we've got these players that are doing that. And on a weekly basis, John McGinn's captaining aside in the Champions League, all of this stuff. I would always try to be positive and upbeat because I think that's something that we're not always particularly good at as Scotland fans. And you still have to temper that with being pragmatic and realistic. But I would say I would feel confident about us getting through this group. I really don't think it's impossible.
the fixtures as well, I think, falls quite nicely. So we've got two away games to start off with in September. So we go away to Denmark or Portugal to start with. So it's getting a really tough one out of the way first. If we get anything there, it's kind of a bonus. As we always say, if you get anything against the pot one team, that's kind of the difference it sometimes makes for qualifying. But really, it's your pot two team is your direct rivals. So we get that one out the way first. Belarus away out the way as well. Get that sort of COVID feel to an empty stadium, which no one's going to enjoy. Get that out of the way. We finish up the double header. It is away to Greece and home to the pot one team. So that Greece game away is going to be massive, I think, because you've got to take into consideration they're going to go into that final game against Belarus, probably going to win that one. So you kind of take it as they're going to get 3 points in the last day. We're playing our biggest game at home. But imagine the atmosphere that night if it all comes down to that one. We've done it before. We've played Denmark on the last day before. We've beat them. And going by the Nations League as well, Portugal, they're there for the taking. We didn't quite do it against them, but we learnt a lot from the Nations League campaign just there. And I would not write us off beating them at the end of a qualification campaign at home in the last day, because that's going to be electric.
Yeah, I was one of the last games that I was at Hampden before we moved out to Australia was that Denmark game, and the atmosphere was just incredible. And it was such a beautiful moment to be there as a Scotland fan, obviously having lived away for so long and not been at many games at Hampden previously, to watch Scotland play an excellent side, but not just compete and like scrape to a good result. We absolutely battered Denmark in that game. And, there's this brilliant run that we were put together across this period. There's the Spain result, but a lot of other teams that we were just like taking care of business. And I feel like that did stutter quite a bit in the last, maybe even the last year or so. It's felt like quite a difficult period for Scotland, but there's definitely been signs from the Nations League that I think that we've got the opportunity to get back into that level of consistency and performance level sooner rather than later, which is really encouraging, and hopefully we do that in time for March for the playoffs.
Absolutely.
I think maybe just one other Scotland thing that we should touch on, just because it's literally just happened this evening, was Russell Martin has been given his marching orders by Southampton. 29 caps for Scotland was, I don't think, ever phenomenal, but he served the country well. Would you maybe expect to see him in Scotland managing at some point?
Yeah, it seems like a kind of natural progression for him. He's done it at a good level now. He's got the experience under his belt. You're looking at likes of, first one that pops into my head is David Gray's under pressure. Wouldn't put it back. A club that has often gambled with young managers would not be surprised the slightest.
Could be very interesting if he does end up in the hot seat at Easter Road. But let's take a minute to look at their crosstown rivals, because it is a huge week for Hearts coming up this week. They are not heading into it with the best result from the weekend. Neil Critchley was, I think, left stunned with Hearts' performance in their 1-0 defeat to 10-man Killie on Sunday. But it could be a huge week because they are on the verge of qualifying out of their Europa Conference League group stage. It would be the first time Hearts have ever made it out of a group stage, and it would only be the second time a non-Old Firm team has made it out of a European group stage. The one and only time that's happened before was Aberdeen in 2007-2008 season. It's a massive week, Laura, isn't it? More importantly, do you see them being able to get through this game and to qualify out their group?
I do actually, and that's what makes it quite exciting, because we all knew, like, the last game last week, they were playing Copenhagen away. I think that's the one we kind of pinpointed right from the start. Like, they're probably not going to get anything from that game. Let's write that one off. Yeah, okay, they lost 2-0. But Petrocub sit third in the Moldovan league. I mean, no offense to Moldova, but if our best teams in Scotland aren't beating teams from Moldova, they don't really deserve to be in European competition because I get the Conference League is the kind of third tier and it is giving the opportunity to these smaller clubs, but am I wrong in saying that Hearts are at a higher level than them? I mean, they
Yeah,
should be beating Petro Cub at home.
I think so, and I think especially like you're saying, because Tynecastle can be such a fortress, hasn't always been in the European matches, but the atmosphere is always amazing. But yeah, I think if Hearts could have chosen, a game to kind of like finish their campaign on, this would probably have been the lowest ranked team that they will play and at home. So yeah, you would be hopeful. There has been a little bit of an upturn under Critchley, but obviously the result of the weekend is a massive kick in the teeth. Losing 1-0, to Kilmarnock's not in and of itself a bad result. It's just the fact that they were against 10 men for pretty much the whole 90 minutes, and that's not got to be a good way to gear themselves up for that match. You were mentioning there though, just the Copenhagen game. There were a couple of brilliant little moments that came out from the game and the surrounding trip for Hearts there that would be good to touch on. There was something brilliant that Copenhagen did officially through the club with a little Hearts fan. Did you see this?
I did see this actually. So was a boy in the crowd? I don't know if this boy was maybe about 8, 9 years old, maybe, and they went into the crowd to pull him out and offer him the chance to be the mascot to walk out with Lawrence Shankland. I think this is lovely. I actually kind of like how authentic it is, just picking a fan out the crowd. And I don't know how they pinpointed them and how they kind of chose them in advance, but I think that's so much nicer than just like, applying to the club saying, oh, can you pick my child? Or being picked in a draw. It's like so nice to just scan the crowd and go, yeah, let's give him a night he's not prepared for in the slightest, and he's never going to forget this.
Well, that's the thing. And I mean, like, because obviously you've worked in match days and stuff as well. And we do it as well. It's generally just like kids from a local school or a club or some sort of group or sports team that is affiliated with the club. But I thought this was so cool because it's like the kid. I mean, if I was that age going on an away European match to a cool city like Copenhagen, I'd be like, this is the greatest trip ever. But the fact that you're sitting in the crowd and then the club come up and say, do you want to walk your team out away in Europe? Like, that's something that you think of all the thousands of kids that have been Hearts mascots at Tynecastle, whatever. Amazing occasion. You maybe even get to do a cup final. How many of them have got to be walking out their team away in Europe? It's just, that's something that'll live with them forever, and just a class thing for Copenhagen to do as well. Some Hearts fans that might not have such a memorable remembering of their trip to Copenhagen would be two Hearts lads that were in a nightclub and very much seemed to be zoned out by that point of the evening as well. I don't know if you saw this. This was because there was one place in particular that seemed to be just overtaken, a kind of nightclub or a bar somewhere with a stage. And the guy came out and just had learned lots of Hearts songs. So all the Hearts fans were joining in. Their beers were flowing and stuff. But there's two lads who have maybe had a bit of a skinful and just needed to sleep it off for a little bit whilst all this was going on around about them.
Incredible scenes.
Yeah, best of luck to Hearts when they play Petro Cub on Thursday night. It's just worth pointing out as well that they can't actually break into the top 8. So the best that they can do is qualify for this next playoff round. The top 8 teams go through to the round after that. But it still would be an incredible achievement and something that was so important for Scottish clubs, especially the non-Old Firm teams, to be competing at this level and helping to rack up coefficient points, because it really takes all clubs to try and maintain that level of having a good number of coefficient points, so we can get more clubs qualifying for these tournaments and competitions regularly.
History beckons right here. It's Maeda! He scores! It's Celtic's moment!
Well, it was the League Cup final at Hampden this weekend. Laura, it was box office, wasn't it? Absolute box office.
I was not
goals.
expecting this.
a penalty shootout, there's a little dash of controversy sprinkled on top. Take us through it. What was this game like for you?
We were talking about this beforehand, and I was like, do you know what? It'll be like a more than 2-0 for Celtic. We won't really touch on this in the podcast much. It'll be a complete foregone conclusion. How wrong was I, by the way? um, very, very happy to see that it was just a classic cup final. And I think that's what we've all been crying out for a long, long time. At least as neutrals anyway. Just to have a cup final, an old firm game that was evenly placed, lots of goals, lots of drama. Now, we had 3 goals, went to extra time, went to penalties. We've had a controversial penalty decision as well to throw into the mix. It's all been happening here. And outstanding penalties as well, to be fair. Only one that was missed. And amazing to say, it wasn't even the goalkeeper that took it that missed the penalty either. So we've got lots to break down. Finn, how did you feel from this one? Because obviously you're obviously feeling a bit sore after this, but surely it was good just to see them compete. This is what Rangers fans have been crying out for.
It was. I mean, there was actually something interesting that it was Hamish that mentioned this on the preview show last week. So Hamish, Celtic fan and runs a Celtic AM YouTube channel, where he'd made the point that the league games, there have been some beatings in there for Rangers or whatever, and even the games at Ibrox, Rangers haven't been particularly good in. But cup matches, cup finals, semi-finals and matches at Hampden have actually been really close, regardless of how Rangers have been playing, or Celtic for that matter, going into them. And this kind of felt like a continuation of it. I think because the Scottish Cup final in May probably felt on the balance, I think Rangers were the better side. They just couldn't come out on top. They got even closer this time and still couldn't come out on top. So of course it's disappointing, and penalties is, one of the most, when your team is the team that loses, is the most cruel way to lose a game of football. But there is plenty of encouragement, I think, there for Rangers. Not that will be much succor to the fan base, right now or for the next couple of days or weeks, I would suspect. The good thing is I think they've got the chance to try and go one further in the not too distant future, because there's obviously the Old Firm game at the start of January at Ibrox, and I think Rangers can feel that they can go into that with a level of confidence, which I think they came into this game with. And this was something we were talking about with Joshua Barry on the preview show as well, was Clermont has since the summer, and through some rubbish domestic results that have continued all the way to November, been like, you just need to wait, you just need to give us time, you'll see the real Rangers around about October, November. Well, October, November came and went, but now they do genuinely seem to be, with some of the players that are coming in. I think Nico Raskin in particular has been excellent. I know he made a mistake for one of the goals, but in recent weeks, him and Diamandi in midfield have been really, really good coming into the team. Hamza Igaman has been just a breath of fresh air up front, a different option. Danilo's coming back from injury. Hadji's had that whole weird thing with his contract settled, and he's come back in and contributed a lot of assists and a couple of goals in recent weeks. So it did just feel like it was a much closer context. I know obviously that was borne out in the way that it was just going from end to end to end to end. Some of the chances that both teams had were incredible.
Yeah, and I think also the fact that Celtic obviously took the lead to go into 2-1, so Rangers pulled it back to 2 each. But I think the biggest thing for me actually was, Nicholas Kuhn. It looked like he'd won it for Celtic. What was it, around the 87th minute or something like that?
Yeah.
And it was a matter of seconds later that Danilo went up the pitch and equalised. Again, to pull it back for a second time on the day, it was a quick turnaround for me. You score to go 3-2 up in the 87th minute, heads go, and Celtic mentally probably thought they'd won it at that point. Rangers could easily have crumbled, but the attitude that Rangers showed to just be like, no, straight up, we're going to deal with this now, and not give you a second to think about it. That to me shows such strong mental strength. Like that's something that Rangers have to take heart from.
I think it's a really interesting point that you've raised there as well, because I think there was actually, obviously Rangers came into this game and I think maybe they looked a bit leggy towards it, and there wasn't a great amount of depth on the bench. So the further the game went on, and especially into extra time, you felt like it was going away from them. But I think the mentality thing is important, because we have seen Rangers teams previously go 1-0 down to Celtic or whatever, and the heads just go. Like, they don't know what they're doing. We've seen it happen, not just against Celtic, in other domestic games, away at Killie, or, there's been other games where they've done that. I think it speaks volumes to that mentality, and you're right, it has to be something that they build on. We've seen snippets of it. Generally, Rangers tend to get into that headspace when something's already gone, when the league's already gone, or they're too far behind in an Old Firm game or whatever. But this was amazing that, as you're saying, right at the death, Celtic go 3-2 up, you think game over, and then Danilo comes back and scores that goal. In the game against Tottenham Hotspur, I thought Rangers were excellent. They probably should have won that game. And again, there was a mental maturity that I saw there, because Spurs in the second half brought £125 million worth of talent off the bench, get an equalising goal. And at that stage, you think, not just Rangers, but any team with the lesser resources or whatever, will probably start to tire. The hits probably will go, and it's just a war of attrition, and the bigger team will just keep going until they get a second goal. Rangers didn't do that. They made another couple of subs themselves, and they went on the offensive because they didn't want to get hemmed in. And that, I think, was a brilliant thing to see from the Spurs game. We saw that again from the way that they kept coming back against Celtic there. I don't know what it means over the longer course of the season, because I do think Celtic are just too far in front. They're too good domestically at this stage. But it's got to give Rangers a lift in the context of the rest of the season. And, there's still one other cup competition up for grabs as well. We saw Celtic did drop a number of points after Christmas last year. We don't know if it'll happen again. It doesn't look like it's going to. But there's a lot, I think, to take heart from. Maybe one or two of the other points just to pick out of the game. I don't know what you made about the penalty shootout. Obviously, a lot of people are zoning in on the fact that Jack Butland took one. He was Rangers' 5th penalty taker. Don't know why they were worried, because it was genuinely probably the best penalty of the whole shootout. Like, it was fantastic. He was not bothered at all. But is there a question to be asked about why Rangers number 9, Cyril Dessers, didn't take one?
Massively. This is the thing for me. So there was two things that stuck out for me. A moment earlier in the game where Rangers, I can't remember the exact players that were involved, but it was Rangers were 4 versus 1 on goal. Cameron Carter-Vickers ended up putting that kind of flame out. But essentially, if you've got 4 players in attack and only 1 defender, that doesn't come down to 1 defender being Superman. It comes down to bad decision making, slow and sluggish play, and not capitalising on that break, because Rangers should absolutely have scored at that point and probably would have changed the whole kind of demeanour of the match at that point. Anyway, that one, and the penalty. Your 5th penalty is a huge one. It's a statement penalty, and for your number 9 not to step up at that point, and instead of that, you're number 1 of all players. It's not just you're number 10 or you're number 7 or whatever. You're number 1. That's wild to me. And I think everyone probably reacted in the same way. And like, fair play to me, put it away, but it's not his job to be putting it away. It's his job to be stopping them going in. And to have him concentrating at that other end of the pitch is absolutely wild. What is Dessers? Is this a confidence thing? Is this a mental thing for him? Or is this purely something that we're not aware of, and Butland is actually the secret weapon? That was what they had this plan all along.
I'm not entirely sure. I think the fact that he's lost his place in the starting lineup to Hamza Egerman, who's a 22-year-old who's never really played at this level before, it's got to knock your confidence. Not that he was ever hugely confident striker necessarily before that, but it did seem peculiar. And I think if there's a player playing at a club like Rangers or Celtic, or at that level of the game, if you're not prepared to step up at those moments, I don't think you deserve to be at that level, quite frankly. The match wasn't without incident, Laura. There's obviously the penalty claim that Rangers had.
So Bobby Madden was tweeting about it. So he was posting this on Instagram. But Bobby Madden's really good actually. Since he's retired, he posts a lot about the controversial decisions and he explains why. And it's very much what he thinks and the reasons why he would have given it or why he thinks the ref didn't give it. So he's came out for this one, right? So this is the instant where, again, sorry, cannot remember which players were
I
involved.
think it was Czerny. Czerny was the one that was breaking into the box. Yeah.
Yeah, so this incident started outside the box and I think it ended outside the box, but the screenshot that has been shown everywhere right now online is the pull on the kind of the arm is happening on the line. Now, Boy Madden has said this is 100% a penalty. It doesn't matter when the holding started or when it ended or what direction the players are moving in. The evidence is the holding happened within the penalty area, and he's amazed this one didn't go to a VAR decision. I'm going to assume you think this is a penalty, Finn. And I'm not going to sit here and debate the laws of the game because a referee's come out and said very clearly it is. I personally I don't really like the idea of it's on the line, so it's a penalty. I didn't think, I was quite happy this one wasn't given. I think it's a soft one.
I think it's in the context of the whole game as well. Like you're mentioning the 4-on-1 chance I think Rangers had. It's like, just score that. You don't need a penalty.
Yeah.
But I think it's more, and Philip Clement was asked about this ad nauseum in his post-match press conference. Of course he was, because it's Scottish football. But I thought he was quite clever in the way that he dealt with it, because he was like, I didn't see it, and the ref hasn't seen it, could have spoken to him.
That's what they always say.
But he said, but he was told that the referee had said to him, John Beaton, he's like, oh, the VAR team said I didn't need to look at it. And he's like, well, how? Because if it's something it's literally the whole point of VAR is if there's something contentious, they at least review it.
If it's not a clear and obvious error, though, then why does it need to go to the TV screen, the monitor?
But I think with something like this, it is something clear and obvious because you literally have a still frame that shows like that, much like you would with an offside. It's either onside or it's not. So it's either a foul in the box or it's not. And just kind of at the end of the day, I just hate that whenever a game, even if it's not the deciding factor, if it's something for fans or the media to fall back on, it's so endlessly tedious.
It's
I just absolutely hate it.
So that is why we should end this podcast now and stop talking about it, because by the time this comes out on Tuesday, no one will be even caring about listening to was it a penalty, was it not. It is very boring conversation. But I love your company, Finn, regardless.
Laura, you can't say people will have forgotten about this by Thursday when the show comes out. We are still talking about Georges Cadet's offside goal from the 90s. Like, there's everything. So we what I will do, just to all kind of sum it up, I just wanted to ask you, where do you think this leaves us in the context of the whole season for the league challenge, for the title race? Of course, we're including Aberdeen in that as well. Where Celtic go from here? Where Celtic go from here? Because I mean, it's hard to look past Celtic for another treble here, surely, just with the form that they're in.
I still think it's Celtic's season, it's Celtic's cups, it's Celtic's silverware to throw away. It would have been nice to kind of break it up and have a different team lift it for a change. I mean, I say that, okay, Celtic didn't lift it last year, so it's not like it is all Celtic consistently right now, but in the grand scale of things, Celtic are extremely dominant. They are by far the best team in the country right now, and I just don't see that change anytime soon. Even if Rangers take heart from this going into the derby at the new year, that's just one derby win. Yes, it'll do well for Clement and it'll probably save his job for a while, but it's not going to change the title race anytime soon. It could be a slow burner. It's a marathon, not a race. But come January, I don't think it's going to change anything. Aberdeen, I can't see doing anything in the long run. So unless Rangers just pick it up slowly and surely over the next few months, and we talk about this again in April, and they've closed the gap, I just do not see anything other than a Celtic treble.
I think that's probably fair, because all you can go on is what's been going, and of course Rangers have only just now really started to come into some semblance of form and consistency over the last couple of weeks in all competitions. But the points differential as it is at the moment is 11 points. So that would require Rangers to win every game between now and the end of the season, and Celtic to lose 3 Old Firm matches, one of which will be at home, and at least one other match in there as well. And you're just like, if the form they've been in, can you see Celtic losing 4 matches? And more importantly, can you see Rangers winning every domestic game to the end of the season? Don't think so. So that's kind of the reality of where we are. I do wonder if going so close in the Scottish Cup final last year, being beaten on penalties this time, there's a chance, obviously, for Rangers to get some revenge at New Year if they can finally get over that massive hurdle that's been there for Clermont. They could potentially win the Scottish Cup. I think that's probably, realistically, the best chance Rangers have got of really putting one over on Celtic this season, which is still, when you're a club like Rangers or Celtic, that's still a failure of a season. So, but given where how bad it started, not in their home stadium and with dreadful results, a Scottish Cup win, getting to another final and closing the gap on Celtic in the league is probably about the best Rangers can hope for here. On that very upbeat note, I think that's all we'll have time for in the podcast this week. Thanks very much for joining us. My huge thanks to Laura for joining us. Our condolences and all of our prayers and best wishes with Andrew as he tries to look after his kids through the night on his Todd. And hopefully all 3 of us will be back next week in time for our final show of 2024. All that remains for me to do now is to say go away and listen to something else. Bye.